Hello again. This video is all about meditation, mindfulness, mantras, 3 M's. So I want to start with the general use of the word meditation. When I ask people, do you meditate on a regular basis? They will often say to me, oh yes, I've got this tape or this CD or this, MP3. And I listen to that, sometimes in the evenings or perhaps if I'm in the bath or something. And it just guides me to a beautiful place and I feel peaceful and happy. Now, it's a bit unfortunate to use the word meditation for that process. It's not actually what I would call meditation. I would call that a guided journey or creative visualization. And the process that's going on there is that you are dropping into a different mind space. Sometimes we use the word liminal for it, which is like halfway between waking and sleeping, but it's slightly dreamy. But you are still using your mental capacity to imagine things in your mind. So your mind is still active. It's active in a different way. It's not receiving images from outside, and it may not be full of the same kind of anxieties and future or past concerns, because you have guided your mind, guided your imagination into considering something different on an inner level. It's like creating a magical story for yourself. Now, this is a really, really useful way to use the mind, both to make the whole physique feel calmer and more settled. It's also really useful because this is the space where you can ask for guidance. You can ask to meet an angel, or you can, ask to get some kind of power animal or spirit who will answer questions for you. So this concept of the creative imagination or creative visualizing has become very popular in the last few decades. And we could probably put it down to Carl Jung, actually, but also there was a friend of his called Henri Corbin, a Frenchman, and they discussed together this notion that we have this area of the mind which is called imaginal. It's a part of the mind that creates something in its own right. It's not just fantasy, but it can produce something very special. Now, when you go into that state, you can sometimes actually meet a guide who is unexpected, that you hadn't said, oh, I want to go and meet such and such an angel, or, I want to go and meet my guardian angel or my spirit guide or my power animal. You can go into that space and some being will just make their presence felt. And you could be quite surprised by it. I'll tell you a story about that. I was taking a guardian angel workshop at a mind, body, spirit event in London many years ago, actually, before these events were cancelled for various reasons. And I took the group on a guided journey to meet a guardian angel. And a lady came up to me afterwards and she said, I was really surprised. My guardian angel turned up looking like an Indian with a turban with a jewel on it, and his clothes were all silky and, just like some kind of Indian prince. And she said, and I was so surprised, she said, because I'm a Catholic and I expected my guardian angel would have a white dress and wings. And we talked about that I wondered actually why she'd come to this event, because she was a Catholic, and if she already believed in guardian angels, maybe why was she there? And actually she said she had recently lost her husband, and she was under the mistaken impression that I was some kind of medium or clairvoyant who could put her in touch with her husband. So she hadn't actually come for the reason that I was offering, the class that I was offering. Now, she stayed in touch with me, and afterwards she contacted me and said, after that very surprising event, I was impelled in some way to find out more about India. And her husband had died, so she'd come into some money, and she actually went on a trip to India. And it completely opened her eyes, this event. And it was such a surprise for her. And I've had a surprise like that, again, many years ago, fairly early in my spiritual quest, which goes back a long way. I had a character pop up when I was meditating in my usual way. And before I got into deep meditation, this little character turned up, and he was dressed in white robes and had white hair and a long beard. And I was very surprised. I said to him, "Who are you? Are you the Maharishi?" Because that's how I learnt my meditation. He said, "No, I'm not the Maharishi. I'm Pythagoras." I didn't know anything about Pythagoras as an esoteric teacher. All I knew about Pythagoras was from my geometry lessons at school. So anyway, the follow-up from that was that Pythagoras encouraged me to go and learn some Western philosophy, because up until that point I'd always been interested in the Eastern philosophies and reading the Bhagavad Gita and things like that. So anyway, that's another story. But what I'm trying to say here is that if you go into that liminal space, you can take yourself on a journey, or you can listen to somebody's recording, and I make recordings like this to help people meet angels, or to help people meet ancestors so they can get guidance about what to do. So it's a very powerful thing to do. But the mind is still engaged in a particular way. We haven't gone over the threshold into a space which is clear and empty. We have not transcended thought. There is still some thinking going on of a different kind. So that is guided visualization, guided journeys, creative visualization, whatever you want to call it. But for me, it's not what I mean by meditation. Also, what I don't mean by meditation is this mindfulness. Now, mindfulness is a very popular word nowadays, and somebody has made a very big success of an app called Headspace. Now, I personally haven't listened to it. So, in some ways, I perhaps should tread a little carefully about what I say. But what I'm aware of, because I did try Buddhist meditation when I was very young, before I discovered how to use a mantra through transcendental meditation, what I understand mindfulness to be is a kind of mental training where you are encouraging yourself to stay in the moment, in the now, in the present, and be mindful of everything that's going on. So that again is an incredibly useful practice. I personally think, from my experience, that it's very difficult, especially for beginners. It might be that the Headspace app has made it easier for people, in which case that's absolutely brilliant. But mindfulness, being present in the now, present, is not the same as mindlessness, when there is no mental activity at all. And that is what happens when you go into transcendental awareness. And that's why that word transcendental was used by the Maharishi for his meditation program. Transcendental meditation. takes you beyond thoughts. Now, when you go beyond thoughts, you get into this clear space. You get into the light, which we've just been talking about in previous videos. And that, for me, is the real goal. However, what we also realise by using these other techniques is that there are many layers to the mind. And when the mind settles down out of its normal daily concerns, there are different spaces that you can enter. And as you enter the different spaces, you begin to discover what I call the mindscape, the immense landscape of the mind, the immense universe of the mind. And as you get more experience, you can choose where to go. And if you don't want to go anywhere in particular, you can go to that transcendental space, which is beyond all thought. So you go into the silence, into the stillness, into the light. And when you move from your everyday concerns and delve deep, 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 like a diver diving into the ocean and plummeting down to the ocean floor, what mystics call the ground of your being, and you just experience the total awareness of your own being in the light, then that journey, when it becomes regular and habitual, begins to inform your everyday way of being and doing. When you go into meditation and you're deep in the meditation and you feel the stillness, you feel the silence, you are just in a completely neutral state of awareness, bliss, joy, light. When you're in that state, that is a state, right? A state of bliss. And the more you go into it, the more it becomes familiar to you, the more that stays with you when you come back up to the surface, as you must do in order to participate in life. And then gradually, instead of just being a state, which happens when you meditate, it becomes a trait that is going on a lot of the time for you. And that eventually leads to what people call enlightenment, so that you're in that state or trait all the time, which is quite an unusual thing to happen for people. But I think it happens more and more nowadays because, since people like the Maharishi introduced meditation at such a popular level, and before him there were other Indian teachers like Paramahansa Yogananda and people like that, the Western culture has embraced these things, which is obviously why mindfulness has become popular. But the Transcendental Meditation program was developed by the Maharishi for Westerners to bring meditation into their daily lives on a really regular basis. Didn't need to go and sit in a cave in the Himalayas. You could do it in your bedroom. And he wanted to encourage more and more people to experience that amazing stillness, that amazing silence. And I think he was actually much more successful than most people would realise. And because of Maharishi, meditation became a word that was used in magazines and so forth. And of course, very celebrities joined and took it up, like the Beatles and so forth. So that was why meditation sort of entered the public domain in a big way, just like vegetarianism did, and so on and so forth in the 60s. And what the Maharishi was bringing to that program is very different from the suggestion brought from Buddhism. Now, there's a long story about the different schools of Buddhism, which we can't go into here. But basically, the notion of simplicity and stillness and calm that we Westerners associate with Buddhism is obviously a great attraction to it. And the Buddhist is saying, when they're talking about mindfulness, that you can just enter that state of stillness and perhaps things will go on. You may wrestle with your demons like the Buddha did, sitting under the tree, and you will come to eventually get to a state of enlightenment. And that enlightenment disengages you from the suffering in the world. Now, that process is obviously magical and very special. And, you know, those ascetic practices, those world-denying practices, which we associate with Buddhism, with the Buddhist monk, is one way of approaching spirituality. But another way, which I'm personally teaching and personally engaged with, is a tradition where you go into those states of consciousness and you proactively engage with the divinity, the divine power that sustains you, and you engage in a co-creative process. So I think that's probably enough on this topic for now. But let me just say that when I teach the Schaefer method, I am basically teaching something very close to transcendental meditation, because I give people a sound shape, a zera I call it, whereas in Sanskrit it would be called a mantra. So it's a very similar technology, and its goal is the same, to transcend your everyday thoughts. And so that is what the Schaefer process encourages. But in addition to that, you then engage with a co-creative process, and that's designed to enhance your life, your personal life, and it's also designed to bring great benefits to anybody in your immediate circle or in the wider community. So look out for more videos in my Mystical Wisdom series. And in the meantime, if you haven't started meditating after all this, then think about it and keep shining.